Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 5 and the member is Intan Tazkia, Muhammad Gufron, and Muhammad Fidri Al-Ghifari, and we will explain about popular methodology. The first, approach, method, and technique. Approach. As an approach, describe how language to use and how its constituent parts interlock. In other words, it offers a model of language. Competence. Describe how people acquire their knowledge of the language and make statements about the condition which will promote successful language learning. Next, method. A method is a practical realization of an approach. The originators of a method have arrived at decision about types of activities, roles of teacher and learners, and some models of syllabus organization. The next, procedure. Procedure is an ordered sequence of technique. For example, a popular dictation procedure starts when students are put in small groups. A procedure is a sequence can be described in terms such as first you do this, then you do that's smaller than a method. And the last, technique, the way in which people announce and develop new teaching practice can make discussion of comparative methodology somewhat confusing. For example, have new insight and claim a new approach as a result. And the second, audiolingualism. Audiolingualism methodology using is the stimulus response reinforcement model. It attempts through a continuous process of such positive reinforcement to engender good habits in language learners. Audiolingualism relied heavily on drills to form this habit. Substitution was built into these drills so that in small steps the student was constantly learning and moreover was shielded from the possibility making mistakes by the design of the drill. For example, repeat and the student answer, there's a cup on the table, teacher spoon, and the student, there's a spoon on the table. The next, presentation, practice, and production. Presentation, the teacher shows student the following picture and ask them whether the people in it are at work on holiday to elicit the fact that they are on holiday. And practice, the teacher gets the student to repeat the sentence. For example, teacher, can anyone tell me? Mary? Yes, Sergio. And student, she's reading a book. And teacher, good, etc. Usually, the teacher puts the student in pairs to practice the sentence a bit more before listening to a few examples just to check that the learning has been effective. And the last, production, which some learners have called immediate creativity. Here the students are asked to use the new language to sentence. And the last, presentation, practice, and production, or PPP, and alternatives to PPP. The fact that it only describes one kind of lesson it is inadequate as a general proposal concerning approach to language in the classroom. It entirely fails to describe the many ways in which teacher can work well. However, more recent models usually designed for training purpose have gone further Then this one, RC, or authentic use, restrict use, and clarification and focus. And the second, OHI, observe, hypothesis, and experiment. And the last, ESA, 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 stands for engage, stands for study, and stands for activity. Thank you.
And the communicative approach. One of the things that CLT embraces within its family is the concept of how language is used. Instead of concentrating solely on grammar, pioneers such as David Wilkins in the 1970s looked at what nation's language expressed and what communicative function people perform with language. The concern was with spoken function as much as with written grammar and notion of when and how it was appropriate to say certain things were of primary importance. Thus, communicative language teachers allow people to invite and apologize, to agree and disagree, alongside making sure the could use to past perfect or the second conditional. They are at opposite ends of a communicative continuum. And for non-communicative activities, first, no communicative desire, no communicative purpose, form, not content, one language item only, teacher intervention, materials control. For communicative activities, a desire to communicate, a communicative purpose, content not form, a variety of language, no teacher intervention, and no material control. Not all activities in CLT occurred at either extreme of the continuum. However, some may be farther towards the communicative end, whereas some may be more non-communicative. An activity in which students have to go around the class asking questions with a communicative purpose, but using certain prescribed structure. Example, have you ever done a bungee jump? Have you ever climbed a mountain? Have you ever been white water rafting? Maybe edging towards the non-communicative and the continuum, whereas another, where students have to interview each other about a holiday they went on, might the nearer the communicative end. And for task-based learning, uh, one way of looking at task-based learning is to see it as a kind of deep end strategy, or in the words of Jen Wills, like a sort of triple P upside down, uh, written by Wills. In other words, students are given tasks to perform, and only when the task has been completed does the teacher discuss the language that was used, making correction and adjustment which the student performance of the task has shown to be desirable. This is similar to the boomerang procedure. However, as Willin herself makes clear, task-based methodology is in fact considerably more complicated than this. She suggests three basic stages. For pre-task, introduction to topic and task. The teacher explains the woman's situation and asks students in pairs to brainstorm the consecutive steps they might take to help cure the woman of her phobia. And for the task cycle, there is a task, pair least possible way to help the woman get over her phobia. Then planning. explaining. First, rehearse how to explain the steps they recommend and justify the order they are in, and then report and reading. The peers tell the class their proposals and justify them. The class listen and count how many ideas they come up with. The teacher lets the class decide and vote on which three steps might be similar to those in a newspaper report about the public woman's dilemma. She writes this on the board. The teacher gives us gives out the text. She asks students to read to see whether their three steps were in the report. Finally, she asks which pair had the most steps that were similar. And the third is focus. Language focus. The teacher helps students with any mistakes she heard during the task. Then they direct student back to the article and they analyze it for topic vocabulary, time expression, syntax element, etc. Another kind of task might be to ask students give a short presentation of the life of a famous historical figure of their choice. We could start by getting them to look at some examples of brief biographies on the internet, for example, before discussing what is in such biographies and how we might change the sequence of the information. If we were going to tell people about our figure in pairs or groups, students now choose a figure and plan their presentation. They might consult language books or ask us to help them with grammar and vocabulary. Then they give their presentation and subsequently we and they analyze what they have said and work with language items that need attention. When all that is over, we must get them to replan and deliver their presentation in order to take advantage of what they learned from the feedback on their first attempts. And then we are going to for method. For method, some of the procedure employed in this for method might strike us being or having been outside the mainstream of classroom practice, or even somewhat eccentric. Nevertheless, in their own way, they contain truths about successful language learning. Community language learning, for example, remind us that the teachers are in classroom to facilitate learning and to help students with what they want to say. Suggest to Paide's insistence on lowering the affective filter remind us how important affect is in language learning. Now, is there any doubt about the appropriacy of getting students to move around in Nelson, as in TPR? For students with a more kinesthetic inclination, this will be especially useful. Finally, getting students to think about what they are learning and to rely on themselves matches our concern for cognitive depth, where close attention to language by individual students has a beneficial effect of the learning process. Uh, One of the most notable features in the silent way is the behavior of the teacher, who rather than entering into conversation with the student, says as little as possible. This is because the founder of the method, Caleb Gatineau, believed that learning is best facilitated if the learner discovers and creates language rather than just remembering and repeating what has been taught. The learner should be in driving seat, in other words, not the teacher.
Okay, my name is Muhammad Al-Ghifari. I want to tell you about humanistic teaching. And humanistic teaching is concerned about the affective variable influence the designer of methods such as community language learning and suggestion. But humanistic teaching has also found a greater acceptance at the level of procedure and activities, in which students are certified to use their own lips and feeling in the classroom. Such exercise have a long history and owe much to a work from the 1970s called Caring and Sharing in the Foreign Language Classroom by Gertrude Moskowitz, in which many activities are designed to make students feel good and remember happy times while at the same time practicing grammar items. Okay, the next material is method and culture. Teaching and learning is about making the kind of bargain that term describes. Even where teachers and students come from the same town, village, or social group, they are likely to live in different cultures, that of teacher and student reaching an accommodation between those two cultures, which may involve moderation, beliefs, and making compromise. For example, where teacher and students have different views on how often the textbook should be used is part of what all teachers do to a greater or lesser extent. It is one of the things that makes teaching consistently challenging. Okay, the last material is making choice. After you read this chapter about popular methodology, you must making choice. It is extremely difficult to come to solution about which approach and method are best on and are most appropriate for our own teaching situation. As previous chapter have suggested, both theorists and practitioners argue constantly about how language are learned and the best way to encourage this. Okay, that's from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.